The movie starts with a breathtaking scene near a colossal waterfall, where a humanoid alien stands, watching as a massive starship departs the planet. Once the ship disappears into the sky, the alien retrieves a small pot filled with a mysterious black liquid. Without hesitation, it drinks the substance, which instantly begins to take effect. Its body starts to transform, skin turning black, DNA breaking apart, and ultimately causing the alien to collapse into the rushing waters below. As it dissolves, fragments of its DNA are carried away by the current. Fast forward to the year 2089, where a team of archaeologists led by Dr. Elizabeth Shaw and Dr. Charlie Holloway uncovers ancient cave paintings in Scotland. These markings, dating back over 35,000 years, bear a striking resemblance to similar depictions discovered across various civilizations, ones that, in theory, should have had no way of sharing the same knowledge. Their findings suggest something extraordinary, leading to the next phase of their journey. 2 years later, the starship Prometheus embarks on its mission, carrying a crew of scientists and mercenaries in cryosleep. During their long voyage, the ship's operations are maintained by David, an advanced android. With the crew in stasis, David spends his time indulging in human-like activities, studying languages, watching classic films, practicing sports, and even altering his appearance by dyeing his hair. He also takes an interest in the crew's subconscious, observing their dreams. One of these dreams belongs to Elizabeth, recalling a childhood memory where she watched an African tribe perform a burial ritual. Her father had explained to her that different cultures hold different beliefs about death, a lesson that clearly left a deep impact on her. After 2 years of travel, Prometheus finally arrives at its destination. David initiates the wake-up sequence, bringing the entire crew out of cryosleep. As they shake off the effects, they gather to eat and recover. Meanwhile, Captain Jonek, in an effort to lift spirits, sets up a Christmas tree, much to the dismay of Meredith Vickers, the stern corporate representative overseeing the mission. To her, such gestures are pointless. The crew then assembles for a briefing where Meredith plays a pre-recorded holographic message from Peter Wayland, the CEO of Wayland Corporation, the entity funding the expedition. In his message, Peter reveals that by the time they watch this, he will have already passed away. He also refers to David as the closest thing to a son he will ever have. Peter's lifelong quest has been to uncover the origins of humanity and the mysteries of life after death, which is why he backed Elizabeth and Charlie when they approached him with their theory. Taking the floor, the two scientists elaborate on their discovery. The ancient paintings they found worldwide all depict a star map, one leading to a planet with conditions suitable for life. They believe these markings were left behind by an advanced alien species, beings Elizabeth calls engineers. As she theorizes, they are the creators of humanity. However, their claims are met with skepticism from the rest of the crew. Shortly after, Meredith privately summons Elizabeth and Charlie to her quarters, a self-contained space equipped with its own medical pod and life support system. There, she makes it clear that she doesn't put much faith in ancient cave drawings and is only here to ensure Wayland's investment isn't squandered. If the team does find any signs of life, direct contact is strictly forbidden. This restriction leaves the two scientists questioning the real purpose of the mission. After spending 2 years meticulously deciphering numerous ancient languages, David is confident he can communicate with the engineers. However, when he transmits a message to the planet, there's no response. With no signs of life detected, no radio signals or heat sources, the crew decides to proceed with landing. As they descend through the atmosphere, everything points to an uninhabited world. But Charlie notices something unusual, unnaturally straight lines on the surface, an anomaly that suggests intelligent design. The ship touches down at that very location, and the crew prepares for an expedition. Despite not needing one, David dons a suit, ensuring he blends in with his human companions. They set off in a convoy of vehicles toward a massive dome-like structure. Even experienced geologist Fifield can't determine if it's a natural formation, but one thing is certain: it's hollow. Once inside, he deploys specialized probes to scan and map the area, revealing an intricate network of corridors. As they venture deeper, they encounter a small body of water, warmed by sunlight filtering through unseen openings. To their surprise, the air inside contains acceptable CO2 levels. While the planet's surface remains toxic, this space is breathable. Charlie speculates that the engineers were engaged in terraforming and boldly removes his helmet to test his theory. When he confirms the air is safe, the others follow suit, discarding their helmets to continue exploring. David soon discovers a wall covered in strange black goo, adorned with alien symbols. Drawing upon his linguistic expertise, he activates the inscriptions, triggering a stunning holographic projection. Ghostly figures sprinting through the corridors. The crew instinctively follows the apparition until they stumble upon the lifeless body of an engineer, positioned near a sealed doorway. Sensing the situation could turn dangerous, Fifield and biologist Milburn decide they're no longer needed and head back to the ship. Meanwhile, the rest of the team examines the alien corpse, noting its remarkable preservation. David, undeterred, manages to unlock the mysterious door, revealing the severed head of an engineer in pristine condition. The further they explore, the clearer it becomes. This place is a graveyard. More bodies are discovered, solidifying the idea that this species has perished. Within the chamber, signs of life still persist, small worms wriggling through the dust. But more striking is the colossal humanoid head statue, murals stretching across the ceiling, and an array of stone cylinders. David observes moisture seeping from the containers, and moments later, one of them starts releasing a dark organic substance. Elizabeth, preoccupied with studying the murals, notices their shifting patterns and realizes something has disturbed the room's atmosphere. Convinced they should leave immediately, she and Charlie begin securing the engineer's head for transport. Unbeknownst to the others, David quietly takes one of the cylinders, suspecting its significance. As he reaches his conclusion that this place is not just a structure but a tomb, Yannick issues a warning. An intense storm is approaching fast. Meredith grants them only 15 minutes to return before sealing the ship. With no time to waste, the team dashes out of the cave, scrambling into their vehicles. The storm howls behind them as they race back to safety, reaching the ship's ramp just as it closes behind them. As the team makes their way back, the alien head accidentally tumbles out of the vehicle. Elizabeth immediately rushes to retrieve it, but in doing so, she gets caught in the storm. Charlie attempts to rescue her by driving the vehicle through the raging winds, but he too ends up trapped. In the end, it takes David and a set of wires to pull them both to safety. Once back aboard the ship, the crew gets to work decontaminating both the hangar and their own suits. However, they soon realize that Milburn and Fifield are still missing. It turns out the two scientists have lost their way inside the cave. Yannick manages to establish contact with them, but due to the storm, retrieval isn't possible until morning. Meanwhile, the team begins examining the alien head. After sterilizing it, a scan reveals that what they thought was an exoskeleton is actually a helmet. When they carefully open it, they uncover a humanoid face inside. What's even more intriguing is that its cells are still active, particularly on its forehead. Hoping to stimulate it, they run a stem line into the brain, tricking it into thinking it's still alive. The experiment works at first. The face twitches, showing signs of activity, but things quickly spiral out of control, and the overstimulation causes the head to explode. Elizabeth analyzes a sample she had taken earlier and is thrilled by her discovery. The DNA matches that of humans. Her hypothesis was correct. These beings were the creators of the human race. Elsewhere, David privately reports to a cryo-sleep pod containing a mysterious individual. No one else, aside from Meredith, knows about this. Confronting David, Meredith demands to know what was said. His only response is that the individual asked them to try harder. David later examines the cylinder he had brought back. Inside, he finds several capsules filled with a dark, viscous liquid. This discovery sparks an idea, prompting him to pay Charlie a visit. Over drinks, the two discuss the lengths they'd be willing to go for answers. Later that night, Charlie joins Elizabeth in her room where she shares the groundbreaking news about the DNA. Their excitement leads them to celebrate in a more intimate way. Meanwhile, inside the cave, Milburn and Fifield stumble upon a disturbing pile of alien corpses. Their uneasy exploration is interrupted by a call from Yannick, who warns them that the scanners have picked up signs of a life form nearby. The two grow increasingly nervous, but just as suddenly as it appeared, the signal vanishes. Yannick dismisses it as a glitch. Continuing their search, the pair eventually reaches a chamber housing the mysterious monolith, with black liquid oozing from the surrounding cylinders. To their surprise, a strange, snake-like creature slithers through the liquid. Milburn, intrigued, moves closer, only for the creature to latch onto his arm, attempting to break it. Panicking, Fifield intervenes and slices the creature, but its corrosive fluid sprays onto his helmet, burning through it and reaching his face. As he writhes in pain, the alien slips inside Milburn's suit, killing him. The next morning, Charlie wakes up feeling off and notices something unsettling in his eyes. As the storm has cleared, Yannick prepares the team to search for the missing scientists, but he's unable to establish contact. Even the supposed scanner glitch remains unresolved, prompting David to volunteer to investigate. However, while the team ventures into the cave, David deliberately takes a different route, secretly transmitting his findings to Meredith. His path leads him to another chamber filled with countless cylinders and pieces of alien armor. Pushing further, he discovers a corridor leading to a room lined with cryosleep pods. He abruptly cuts off communication with Meredith before activating a nearby machine, triggering a holographic projection. The engineers appear gathered around a star map, one that includes Earth. As the vision fades, David notices something remarkable. One of the cryosleep pods is still active, containing a living engineer. Back with the search team, Charlie struggles to keep up, his condition visibly worsening. Elizabeth watches him with growing concern, but he insists on continuing. Upon discovering Milburn's lifeless body, they cautiously move in to inspect it, only for the snake-like alien to suddenly slither out and escape. Yet, there's still no sign of Fifield. At that moment, Charlie's sickness takes a turn for the worse. His condition deteriorates rapidly, and Elizabeth urgently calls for the team to return to the ship, needing to quarantine him. However, by the time they reach the hangar, Charlie's skin has darkened, turning disturbingly black. Waiting for them is Meredith, armed with a flamethrower, determined to prevent Charlie from coming aboard. Yannick and Elizabeth confront Meredith, their argument intensifying. Meanwhile, Charlie, feeling hopeless about his fate, deliberately walks toward Meredith, prompting her to hurl him to the ground. Elizabeth watches in horror. Shortly after, the crew is placed under quarantine, and David runs tests on Elizabeth to ensure she hasn't been infected by Charlie. What they discover is shocking. She is 3 months pregnant, an impossibility given that she was in cryosleep during that time. Even more disturbing, the fetus has an unnatural, eerie shape. Desperate to remove it, Elizabeth pleads for surgery, but David informs her that they lack the necessary medical resources and personnel. Before they can decide on a course of action, a sharp pain shoots through Elizabeth's abdomen. David administers a sedative, forcing her into unconsciousness. A short while later, some crew members attempt to place her into a cryosleep pod for further evaluation. However, Elizabeth refuses to let this monstrous entity grow inside her. Fighting off those restraining her, she escapes and stumbles upon Meredith's advanced medical pod. She requests a C-section, but to her dismay, the pod is programmed exclusively for male patients. Thinking quickly, she instructs the machine to perform an extraction of a foreign body. The system complies, administering a mild anesthetic, nowhere near strong enough to dull the excruciating pain. As the procedure begins, a mechanical claw reaches into her abdomen, removing the grotesque fetus. The instant it is extracted, the creature bursts free, a nightmarish alien writhing its tentacles in a frenzied attempt to break loose. Despite the unbearable pain, Elizabeth endures the attack until the machine completes her stitches. With sheer willpower, she stumbles out of the pod and slams it shut, trapping the alien inside, where the anesthetic eventually subdues it. Meanwhile, Yannick notices a strange figure outside the ship. A crew member approaches to investigate, only to discover that it is Fifield, now horribly mutated. Without warning, he launches into a violent assault on the hangar crew. A chaotic battle erupts. Standard firearms prove useless against him, forcing them to resort to a flamethrower, finally putting an end to the rampage. Still reeling from her ordeal, Elizabeth staggers through the ship in search of medical supplies. To her astonishment, she discovers Peter, alive and well. He had been the one inside the extra cryosleep pod that David had been monitoring all along. The medical pod was meant for him. Driven by an insatiable desire for answers, Peter is determined to meet the engineer himself. David prepares to lead him there, ignoring Elizabeth's warnings about the dangers lurking on this planet. Refusing to sit idly by, Elizabeth, despite her weakened state, suits up and insists on accompanying them. As they prepare to leave, Yannick voices his suspicions. He believes this isn't the engineers' homeworld, but rather a military outpost, where they had been manufacturing the black liquid, a weapon of mass destruction that ultimately turned against them. He suggests they abandon the mission and return to Earth, but Elizabeth persuades him to hold off until she makes contact with the last surviving engineer. Meanwhile, Peter prepares to depart, and Meredith, revealing herself to be his daughter, pleads with him to reconsider. She warns him that he is chasing certain death. Peter, however, dismisses her concerns and presses forward. Upon reaching their destination, David makes a startling revelation. He instructs everyone to remove their helmets, confidently stating that the disease isn't airborne, subtly implying that he had deliberately spiked Charlie's drink with the black liquid. As the team ventures deeper inside, they come across a chamber filled with thousands of mysterious cylinders. Observing the layout from a different angle, Yannick and Meredith have a sudden realization. This is no ordinary cave. It's a starship. David activates the machine while explaining that the engineers had been preparing to leave for Earth before they lost control of the black liquid, which ultimately led to their demise. The last surviving engineer is awakened, and Elizabeth attempts to question him, but before she can, Peter orders one of his mercenaries to silence her with a blow. He then proceeds to ask his own philosophical questions, which David translates into Proto-Indo-European. However, the engineer responds with sudden aggression, tearing off David's head and using it to kill Peter before turning on the mercenaries, effortlessly eliminating them as they waste bullets on him. Back on the ship, Meredith witnesses Peter's gruesome fate through David's eyes and immediately instructs Yannick to prepare for departure. Meanwhile, Elizabeth desperately flees as the engineer activates his ship, preparing to take off for Earth. The ground shifts beneath her as sections of the structure open up. She calls Yannick, warning him that if the engineer reaches Earth, the black liquid will bring humanity to its end. While Meredith insists they should escape, Yannick refuses to stand by and do nothing. He orders his crew to prepare the ion propulsion, effectively turning Prometheus into a projectile. As Meredith rushes to evacuate, Yannick grants permission for his pilots to leave as well, but they choose to stay by their captain's side. Moments later, the two ships collide mid-air, successfully preventing the engineer's departure. However, as both vessels plummet to the surface, Elizabeth and Meredith sprint for their lives. Meredith is unable to escape in time and is crushed, while Elizabeth narrowly survives by taking shelter behind a rock. Determined to find supplies, Elizabeth makes her way back into Prometheus, but distant noises catch her attention. Grabbing an axe for protection, she cautiously investigates and discovers that her alien offspring has escaped from the medical pod, now grown to an enormous size. Suddenly, David contacts her, urging her to run. But before she can react, the engineer appears and slams her against the wall. Thinking quickly, Elizabeth releases the door behind her, unleashing her monstrous offspring, which immediately attacks the engineer. As she flees, the creature subdues him, forcing an ovipositor down his throat. Shaken and exhausted, Elizabeth is on the verge of breaking down when David reaches out to her once more. He reveals that the engineers have additional ships buried underground and that he can pilot one. Elizabeth retrieves David's head and body, but makes a surprising request. Rather than returning to Earth, she wants to travel to the engineer's home planet. Though puzzled by her determination, David agrees. Before their departure, Elizabeth returns to Prometheus one last time to transmit a message to Earth, explaining what transpired. As the transmission fades, a final revelation unfolds. Emerging from the lifeless body of the engineer, a black alien is born, marking the beginning of a story that will one day lead to Ripley's tale.